So yeah, I'm here to talk a bit about kind of innovation and change really in e-commerce. So as marketers, we need to think about change. We need to think about predicting this change and think about essentially kind of adapting to the change. So at Criteo, we work with a whole bunch of e-commerce clients, 12,000 clients worldwide, and we wanted to produce a bit of content. So we hired a company called Ovum to do a bit of research for us. Now Ovum are essentially like a market-leading market research company, and they hired, spoke to 40-odd senior leaders in e-commerce, real kind of thought leaders to think about, what's the industry going to look like in the next 10 years? So we can kind of, think about this and think about what are the things we need to do differently. So it's a big old report. At the end, there's a URL which you can take and look at it. But what I wanted to do now is just to really look at some of the highlights, given we've got a fairly short amount of time. So it's kind of underpinned really by the consumer, right? And there's a huge change in the consumer in e-commerce. Myself, I'm a millennial, so I've fundamentally been involved in the change in the last 10 years and will definitely be affecting the change in the next 10 years. But I was born between 77 and 94. But the guys that are really making the change are the Generation Zs. So Generation Zs are from 95 onwards, and these guys are absolutely kind of digital natives. So I hope maybe it sounds a bit better there. They want what they want when they want it. It's about instant access, gratification, no disalignment between the kind of fit and the feel of the product. So if I think about now, when I'm buying a product, I think about price sensitivity of the product, the delivery, how quickly it's going to arrive, and in the future, of course, that's going to be standard, but the added complexity is really the fact there's going to be so many more connected devices. So for us, this kind of convenience and immediacy is absolutely kind of paramount to success in the next 10 years. And clients in e-commerce who don't kind of get with it will risk sort of falling at the wayside. So with that, slide is working now. I wanted to look at some of the technologies and some of the things we think are actually going to be quite powerful. So number one, of course, smartphones. We know it's kind of been revolutionary, but just a couple of stats on it. I think it's quite nice, and it's come from the report. 5 million smartphones are bought on a daily basis. 20% of those smartphones are entirely new users, right? So that's 1 million smartphones a day going to users who've never had one before. In terms of e-commerce, like 50% of the transactions are now happening on the smartphone. So it's the kind of dominant, it's becoming the dominant player. And our prediction for Ovum is that it will become it will be the dominant player in 10 years, but it won't be the exclusive one. And in terms of revenues and advertising, back in 2014, 22 billion, mobile advertising was worth. 2019, skip on a couple of years, we're expecting it to be about 64 billion, right? So it's a 3x growth. It essentially shows that it's the fastest growing medium. So, mobile advertising is definitely here to stay. M-payments. My screen down here. I wanted to break this into 3 areas. So you've got mobile commerce, P2P, and proximity payments. So mobile commerce, thinking of Apple Pay, Yo-Yo, Samsung. It's definitely replacing the kind of needs for card and cash. It will do over the next 10 years. But I think the kind of neat thing there is around loyalty. And it's not just the final payment; it's the loyalty based around it. P2P. We've been used to things like PayPal for the last 10 years. Now we've got Snap Cash, Snap Cash, I think, Pop Money, players like this that are great for if you're a classifieds app, right? And if you want to pay someone for a second-hand product, if you want to split a bill. So these things are really growing incredibly rapidly. I think the proximity payments, our report kind of suggests that they will grow, but basically you need an infrastructure behind it. So in terms of, it's more expensive. So it will grow, but it will grow steadily. Now, this is my one question to the audience, right? So don't feel shy. But how many people have a wearable device on them today? Just a quick show of hands. It'd be really cool. Pretty much no one. Oh, maybe one. Yeah, thank you very much, sir. So if I asked you about a smartphone, I think it'd be a kind of resounding kind of everyone. Now, we've kind of looked at this and we thought, right, 650 million wearable devices by 2020. Fairly conservative, to be honest, but it's not going to revolutionize things in the way the smartphone did, okay? But, you know, for sure, for proximity payments, it's great. You know, you can pay at the counter, awesome. But really, you know, it's a companion device for m-commerce. And if you marry it with what we know about smartphones, it can be incredibly powerful. And the three things that came up in our report, which kind of stood out, were the daily routine data, the precise location data, and the device usage data. You know, this is kind of really rich stuff. You know, behavioral and contextual data, which ultimately you can recommend better products for users, recommend better messaging, and hopefully do it within a kind of boundary which is kind of acceptable privacy-wise. So we think this is definitely a super interesting kind of area that will grow, but perhaps not in the most obvious way. And then the walls between offline and online are fading away. So what do I mean by this? So this is a Forrester piece in the US. It looks at kind of the influence of retail sales from previously looking at products online. So if you think about total sales, online only accounts for 7% in retail, okay? But 38% of those sales that happen in the store have been influenced by a search. Now, Google suggests that 8 out of 10 users that go into a store use their phone when they're purchasing. And to be fair, I think it's not far off. I mean, for me, I was in Paris the other day, looking at a jacket, thinking, oh my God, this is rather expensive, given my sterling is crumbling. And I quickly got onto some trusty apps and did a 180 and left the store and said I can buy it cheaper back in the UK. But it's happening, and my kind of point around this is that retailers in particular need to understand this kind of alignment between offline and online if they're to understand their users in a better way. And some kind of good examples is kind of hyperlocation data. Okay, so that's precision targeting data, to be more specific, beacons, essentially. In 2026, we're expecting this to be kind of pretty much mainstream. But at the moment, it's ultimately in its infancy. If you think of Macy's in the US, for example, they've got 800 stores, and they're all kitted out with Bluetooth. Facebook, Google, same thing. They are, they're heavily investing in, and us at Criteo, given our, the kind of nature of the business, we're investing very heavily too, and we have many beacons in our retailers' stores, because really what we want to do is we want to know if someone comes into that store, if they don't have the app, maybe we want to recommend them the app. If we know what they've done online, and then we can know roughly what they're doing kind of in the store, have they purchased or not, then we can provide a better content for them when they leave the store without purchasing, for example. So this whole precision location data and hyper-commerce, if you like, is going to be a pretty big thing. But no kind of digital conference would get away with not kind of talking about this is AI. Okay, and it's the word on it's the stuff everyone's talking about, all about the bots, etc. So I thought really interesting to kind of share some sort of thoughts on there, because I think this is probably one of the biggest things for m-commerce. Firstly, if I think about my business at Criteo, we've been training our algorithms with machine learning and artificial intelligence for years. It's kind of given us a bit of an edge, if you like, over over others, and it's absolutely part of our DNA. And I think that more and more you'll see this happening with providers. But if you take a step back and think more broad strokes, pardon me, think Amazon Echo, think Google Home, think Watson's acquisition of Fluid. The whole point is that once this becomes white labeled, it will become more mass market. And when it becomes more mass market and it's cheaper, it's going to have a really, really big kind of impact on how we shop. So longer term, what we want to think here is the curated shopping experience, not just an experience which is, well, that's kind of weird that you know about it, but people will expect it, essentially. So this curated shopping experience, this kind of delight moment where you think, we can actually show you a whole bunch of things which you weren't potentially interested in and get you to buy them, is where it's going to be. So AI in m-commerce is going to be probably one of the biggest things. But until it becomes mass market and white labeled, it's going to take a bit of time. But we believe by 2026, we'll be in a pretty good place. Checking my counter. Now this is about online moving into the real world. Some examples here. So we have eBay in the UK. If you purchase from eBay, you can pick up your products in Argos. Okay, Argos is a retailer, loads of bricks and mortar stores. If you're from ASOS, the fashion retailer, you can pick up your goods in Boots, a big chemist. You know, it's a win-win. It brings footfall to the stores, and it also allows the customer to have another kind of touch point. So we think this will grow. This will grow steadily, but you know, it's ultimately not the thing that's going to kind of change the world. And I think actually the most basic thing which we expect now is the thing which will push on, and that's getting the product from the customer directly to the consumer. And the mass market efficiencies around this and this kind of continual need that the consumer has. Drones, you know, it's a big topic. Driverless cars, will that be mainstream by 2026 is what we're talking about. Fairly unlikely. You know, it's being tested in certain places. In Rakuten are testing it on golf courses. Will it succeed in a big city is the question mark. And it's a big question mark. Uber-style delivery, Uber-style things, yeah, for sure. And we 100% believe that's going to be part of the mainstream. This is pretty neat. I really like this. This is Tesco Home Plus. I don't know if you have anyone who's been to Korea recently, or in particular been to Seoul recently, but this is pretty sweet. So this is kind of essentially using augmented reality. Now the top 500 products are projected, and so on the subway, if you're going to work or if you're coming back from work, you can go up and you can kind of scan the barcodes, and as a result, you can then pick up your goods when you get home, or they can be delivered when you arrive, however it works. But essentially, it's making it really, really easy. Now, this is being tested in Seoul. It's going out to you know, a bunch of cities across Asia, and you know, we'd expect that to be coming to Europe relatively soon too. So I think that's really nice. And then my last one, predictions, so to speak, before I wrap up, is sort of AR walls and mirrors. I don't know if anyone's sort of seen any of these, but they are starting to come out. This one's for Topshop in Moscow. Now, the basic premise here would be you go there and you basically try on some new clothes, right? So it could be a new shirt, it could be new trousers. But how could this be made a lot better, right? Well, think about what we talked about before, about connecting the wearable devices, about connecting the offline and online experience. You know, if this lady was happy to share data with Topshop about what's in her wardrobe already, great. I mean, that's going to enrich the experience as well. So the point is, even if we have AI in here, we can potentially curate a really great shopping experience for her when she arrives, and you know, avoid it just being kind of pressing products and kind of seeing what they look like on you. So that's where we feel that it's going, and where kind of some of the really kind of exciting trends are. Oh, is it working? So with that, you know, it's not particularly a linear sort of purchase model anymore, is it, right? It's absolutely not. And given we're in Germany, I thought this was particularly fitting. We're looking more at a Pretzel. So, you know, as opposed to saying, here's a classic purchase funnel, which we're all used to, we're looking at a Pretzel. And why are we looking at a Pretzel? Because of the proliferation of devices. Think of beacons, think of, you know, everything I've kind of shown you today, plus a hell of a lot more kind of connected devices. Users won't just go from one place and then purchase, you know, less and less so at least. They'll be taking twists and turns, they'll be coming back on themselves, you know, rather like a Pretzel. So that is, you know, that's essentially one of the things that we think. If I was to boil it then down into sort of three areas, just to kind of conclude, well, number one, there's a hell of a lot more technology coming out there. We're really on the kind of cusp of it at the moment. You know, we think we've got a tough job with app, mobile web, desktop. Well, think about when all these other technologies come into play, and they really are coming into play now. So in 10 years' time, it's going to be huge. Number two, think about the consumer. As I said before, millennials have shaped a lot of change so far. Gen Z are the ones which are completely revolutionizing it. You know, they're digital natives, they do everything on social, you know, the guys who are using Wonder, you know, these kind of people are completely changing the way that the consumer behavior is happening. So we really need to pay attention to them. And lastly, my third point would be, we can track these users. It's going to be a fairly big challenge in itself. But the real challenge would be to provide and understand, let's just say, you know, which of these channels are going to be driving the most value. Okay, so it's all well and good tracking it, but really understanding which channel is providing the most value that will generate the sales. And voila, that's it. So thank you, everyone. I've got a couple of URLs there you might want to take down. I know that James will share the presentation as well. But the first one is the Ovum report, and it's about 25 odd slides. You know, it's really, really detailed on, you know, what's happening in the future. I just gave you a super quick kind of highlight, given the time we have. And our mobile commerce report as well. And that looks at billions of transactions that we have as a business. It looks at trends across different countries, different operating systems, different platforms. You know, it's real data. And we have our latest one that's be coming out in January, which will record the whole of H2. There we go. Thank you very much indeed. See you soon.